Welcome to today's episode of the L&D Clinic for HR professionals, proudly brought to you by Habify, experts in making sure your staff remember what you train them. Welcome everybody to the L&D Clinic. Joining us today is Irisha Luhanga, who is a managing partner at Redefine Human Capital, and she's going to be talking to us about how to make the most out of a difficult situation, which is pretty much what we're all facing right now with COVID-19. Irisha, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoy it. Thanks, Jordan.
You're not only a coach, but you're an entrepreneur and the managing partner of Redefine Human Capital. Why did you start Redefine?
So the business started about 8 years ago. And the reason being is I worked in an investment bank from an HR professional, and I realized there was a huge gap because there were so many people leaving the organization, people with amazing skills and talents. And a lot of them were leaving because they were burnt out, because they did not feel appreciated, and they just wanted something new. And a lot of them were actually leaving without any work. So I went through a whole process while I still worked for this particular bank, just to do a survey to see what was actually going on and why would someone leave a full-time job just to not work for a bit and to go on a sabbatical. And I found out that a lot of people actually were not prepared for the culture of a bank. People did not feel appreciated. And also a lot of the women that were leaving just had their first or their second baby, and trying to juggle both roles were quite tough. So I started Redefine just in the hope of creating a space for professionals where they could be mentored and coached to find their right job that spoke to where they were in terms of their career, and also just to orient themselves a lot quicker in the workspace. And that's when I started Redefine.
So what I hear you say is, in terms of culture in a large organization, often what we miss is the fact that there's human emotion that's involved in being in an organization. Sometimes you experience feelings of isolation, of not having a voice, of not being heard. And no one really prepares you for this. You're expected that you just should slide in and it's all roses. But I'm sure in your time being in the corporate environment, you've had your fair share of training, professional education, so to speak. And being in the HR role, I'm sure you've also encountered training that works and training that doesn't work. And I just really wanted to find out from you, like, how important do you think knowledge reinforcement is to achieve long-term results when training your staff?
I think it's huge. I read an article recently that said that within 30 days after someone's attended training, they've actually lost 90% of what they've learned. So for me, in terms of training, a huge part of it was making sure that I contracted the individual prior to the actual training. So the person had actually read up on what the learning was about, to ensure that the person's goals, their career goals, were aligned to what they were learning. And post the training, just to have sessions, either calls or emails, just to reinforce what they learn. Within the learnership space, I find a lot of learners will come and they will learn as much as they can. However, they were not using the learning practically. So we made sure that the learning was constantly reinforced with the individual. And by doing that, I found that they retained the knowledge a lot quicker than just post the training.
I think it's both a case of knowledge retention, but also transference, actually taking those distinctions and applying that into their workflows. That's the point of training, isn't it? It's a case of, why are we spending this money if it's not working? You need to be able to reinforce it so that the knowledge sticks and that the company benefits ultimately, and the individual benefits. They feel empowered and they feel like they're able to progress in their careers. But now at Redefine, you're leaders in management and training services that are designed to improve people's productivity, efficiency, communication, and employee morale. What are your thoughts on achieving learner accountability in a training coaching combination?
So it just depends on who I'm training. So if it's for younger graduates, I would actually contract the individual, the actual client who's paying their stipend for the learners, as well as the appearance. And I think that's a part that companies forget, that with regards to graduates, that their parents also need to be on board in terms of making sure that this person's actually attending all the lectures. There is a transference of knowledge. But what I do is, in terms of our learning, both for the leadership courses as well as for the graduates, we try different methods for teaching. So we create lots of games as part and parcel of the leadership and the learnership training. As well as different scenarios. We use narrative coaching as well as neurolinguistics programming, because it's speaking to their purpose. It's also speaking to their goals, their aspirations as well.
Yeah, I think you need to take a holistic approach when working with graduates. Something that stood out for me there was accountability, having to get their parents on board. And it doesn't stop there. As a trainer and a coach myself, I often find that when you expect someone to do e-learning on their own, oftentimes they drop out because no one's holding them accountable.
Agreed.
Life happens. And because it happens, well, my priorities shift. I think anyone in training really needs to get a handle on in order to get the right results.
Definitely. And in terms of our leadership training, what we also do is we get the sponsor of the training to actually come on the first day of the training, to the first session, and sit with the leadership team, sit with, if it's a board or the executive team, and right, pose a question to the team just in terms of what their thoughts would be as a possible outcome. And then get that team to actually create the strategy, which they then present on the last day of training. We will facilitate the conversation, because the knowledge sits with you. You understand the environment of your organization. And I find by doing that, it's such a win-win, because the individuals feel quite empowered because they have their voice heard at the end of the day in terms of their strategy. And then they are accountable for the results. So, a strategy could be, we're going to make X amount of money as the leadership team, and we would check in to see, well, how far are we with that? Has the goalpost changed? What are we going to do? And I find it quite interesting, especially with this lockdown, because the goalpost has definitely changed for most organizations. How do we now go in, and how do we now create perhaps a diverse stream of income, or what can this team do to still make sure that from a goal perspective, the company is making money?
I think a lot of the barriers to flexible and home working haven't really been about technology. They've been more about our cultures, our ways of thinking, the very long established paradigms of work. Sometimes we need a crisis to really jolt us into a different way of thinking. So do you feel that the idea of being physically present in the workplace will become a thing of the past?
I do. It depends also on the roles. So for example, doctors, etc., they would need to be present. But I think in most organizations, there is going to be a shift in terms of outcomes, as well as, does the person necessarily need to be present at their desk in order to reach their outcome or to exceed in terms of what they're doing? So I definitely think there will be a hybrid. A lot of my clients have said, for the rest of the year, their staff can work from home. And I think owners of business are now realizing that the same outcome can be achieved if the person works at home and has the flexibility. It's more of, how do you empower and how do you give the tools to that individual for them to exceed. So I definitely think there'll be a hybrid in terms of working from home as well as work.
But now, because of the pandemic, we've been pushed into the fourth industrial revolution, kicking and screaming, I might say. And we've been forced to accelerate technological change and the ways of working. How have you made your income more diverse and capitalize on digital opportunities during COVID-19?
So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, as well as small to medium-sized businesses. And I really encourage them not to be afraid of going online. If we look at the supply chains of most organizations, our products aren't getting sold at the rate that they were prior to the lockdown. So I teach my entrepreneurs to look at the delivery of their product, which is the core business, but for them to create different streams of income, talking about what is their process. So say, for example, if I sold soap, okay, that's my product. But now for me to explain how I make soap, that's a different stream of income. For me to explain how I do my process mapping, that's a different stream of income. I'm creating videos, creating fact sheets, etc., etc. There's just so many ways. They would need to look within themselves in terms of a SWOT analysis. So what are their current strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are the threats in the environment as well? And it's quite interesting because when we look at our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we realize that our life and our experience could actually be a product for someone. I asked them to look at what are they really good at doing. So what does everyone tell them that they're good at doing? So for example, I believe that I'm good at connecting people, but then how do I explain this and how do I create a product or a stream of income on showing people how to connect other people? And really it's about talking from my place of strength and how to actually create a product based on the experience, package it and sell it. I also teach the entrepreneurs at looking at your weaknesses. You can teach your weakness and spin it. So say for example, if you're an entrepreneur and admin is not your strength, how do you teach other people who can run a certain business that they would not need to focus on perhaps bookkeeping? There's so many websites and software applications that they can use to actually run their projects without necessarily them being admin focused. How do you turn this COVID-19 to be an opportunity for your business? What can you teach? For me, it's always looking at where we are and how do we sell products that does not necessarily mean that we need to stay within a particular border. That's why I love the internet, because it's a platform for all of us to use to market and sell our products globally.
That's really interesting, Irisha, because that's exactly what the L&D Clinic is. We are a soft skills and coaching company. And obviously with COVID-19, we've experienced a postponement in our training sessions. So instead of sitting back and just saying, okay, well, we'll wait for COVID-19 to finish, let's get active. Let's get in communication. Let's see if there are other people that are experiencing the same, feelings of insecurity and create a community of support. That is what the L&D Clinic really is. It's not for financial gain. It's about adding value. Every entrepreneur out there has the capacity to add value. So when times are tough, don't sit on your hands. Create something new. Think of possibility, because that's where it starts. Who knows what sort of opportunities may come from the L&D Clinic for our business? We don't know. We haven't even explored that. We're focused on the value, which is connecting people, like you were saying earlier. In terms of your business plan, would you look at making amendments to your business plan in light of COVID-19?
I was actually recently asked that question, and I said to this colleague of mine, I said I wouldn't necessarily change my business plan. I would look at the different vehicles of actually delivering what I'm selling. And the vehicles are no longer physical, face-to-face. The vehicles are now hybrid. So I can train online and I can train face-to-face. I can assist my clients in terms of their fears as they go through this process in terms of COVID. A lot of my clients are really nervous about the possibilities of retrenching their staff. So how can I assist them? How can I teach their staff entrepreneurship training, for example, especially staff that could be facing retrenchment? How can we make the employees their suppliers? So it's various different ways of taking this particular crisis and any crisis and saying, how can I be a partner to my clients? And not necessarily a hard sell, but working alongside my clients from an empathy perspective and also from a guidance perspective, using the skills and the experience that we have at Redefine Human Capital to actually assist our clients go through this process.
Irisha, it's good to know that there are other people out there who are thinking much bigger than just COVID-19. That, we are looking forward. COVID-19 will pass eventually. And when it does, it's the people that have taken steps outside of their comfort zone that are really going to flourish. Thank you so much for joining us on the L&D Clinic today. If you wanted to know more about Irisha and her work at Redefine Human Capital, look up on LinkedIn. We'll link some contact info in the first comment. Guys, thank you so much. Irisha, thank you very much. We'll chat again soon.
Cheers, then. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the L&D Clinic. If you have someone you would like us to interview, please drop us a line and we'll do our best to make that a reality. Thanks for tuning in.